All right. And we are officially live. It's so funny. I'm just so used to recording that for a moment I forgot that now we're actually on YouTube out there. Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Life Take Two, the podcast for anyone who's ever had to start over in life. I'm Jenny Gage, writer, grandma, mom, podcaster, ex MAGA, ex Christian Nationalist, ex white supremacist, ex Mormon, trad wife, all the things, and your internet big sister. This is a show for survivors, seekers, rebuilders, and anyone who's ever whispered, well, that wasn't the plan. And today I am so excited to have one of my cult cousins with me, Jake Vaughn, who, like, you certainly had that life take two moment where you started over. And I wanted to bring you on my channel today. Everyone's begging for live streams. So I wanted to bring you on and talk live about your unique perspective. I first saw you on Cults to Consciousness with the amazing Shalise.
Yes. Wonderful.
And if you are a Shalise approved cult survivor, then you're
Yes, it's
definitely,
rarefied air. Absolutely.
it's
Well, that's
rarefied
how I
air.
found you too. Was Shalice? I was like, oh, okay. Well, if Shalice talked to her, it must be pretty cool. So
Well, and everything that you said just resonated with me so much. So I would like to have you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about where you came from and your journey. And I don't want to say any of it. I don't want to do your bio. I feel like
okay.
people do their bios themselves. So if you'll introduce yourselves to yourselves, hopefully there's just one of you today.
Well, we'll see. I'll talk about all of the me's here to talk. Yeah. Well, my name is Jake. I go by Alt Worldly on YouTube, and I am, I guess, a YouTuber, author, and just normal
What's your
kind of
book
person.
and where can we find
Oh
it?
boy, it's not out yet, but I've got a book coming out soon called "Not Occult" is the working title, not OCCULT, like not occult. Um, and also potentially another novel coming soon. Um, and yeah, I post stuff on the internet. I left Jehovah's Witnesses about 4 years ago formally. I was excommunicated from the religion, disfellowshipped, removed, whatever you want to call it. And I
It's
started
so
putting,
harsh.
yeah, it's very
Arr.
harsh. I started my channel actually just as a vlog, like in the classic sense of like it was a personal blog, like a personal diary. I was a Jehovah's Witness and I was stuck in the cult. I didn't know what to do, and I knew that if I showed my face on the internet, like if I was public about my doubts or criticisms or whatever, that I would be excommunicated. So I started posting anonymously on this channel, and eventually reached a point where I felt like I need to either blow everything. I need to blow everything up. I need to know if I really am going to be shunned. I need to know, like, because maybe my family's different and they won't shun me for leaving the religion. Like
So you were
maybe,
going to see if the rubber was going to hit the road.
yeah. So I did a face reveal. It's not like I shared it all over my social media or anything. I just posted it on YouTube, and it got found by the elders within 24 hours. I was getting calls, and then it had spread to my family. And a few weeks after that, I was disfellowshipped. Yeah. But I was
Uh,
able to record the excommunication process
you
somewhat and put
did?
it on the channel. So that was good. Yeah.
I don't think I've seen that video. Everybody needs to head over to Jake's Alt Worldly. I think that it's really comforting for people who've been in high demand religions. Like some of the topics that
Thank you.
you touch on, it almost helps me as a former Mormon to see my own religious structure in just a slightly different light. We have a bunch of people who've either been married to Jehovah's Witnesses, known Jehovah's Witnesses, former Jehovah's Witnesses, and Sacred Serenity here. I love this comment. Excommunication sucks. Russian Orthodox, that would be a really unique experience, but excommunicated for LGBTQI a support. I left the Mormon church over a single lesson on the evils of homosexuality. And I think that that's such a hard position to be in when your religion forces you to numb your empathy for other people. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also excommunicated for similar reasons. Like the official reason why was apostasy, because I spoke out against the religion. But the thing that moved me to be like, I can't live like this anymore was their stance on LGBTQ issues and feeling like if this is really how God feels, then I disagree with God. And it does suck.
So why is that? I want to just hear a little bit more about that because as a Jehovah's Witness, you certainly were taught that homosexuality was a sin.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that for part of your life, you bought into that you were discriminatory against the LGBTQ community and that you yourself, would never consider that and probably not be friends with anyone who is gay. So what changed?
Well, I guess I didn't really internalize it the way that I was supposed to, partially. Like, I I was kind of robbed of this language growing up. Like they just referred to anything not straight as homosexuality.
Mhm.
I identify as bisexual now, and so I had some, complicated emotions when I started feeling attracted to, the opposite sex, yes, but also the same sex, and I had some like encounters with friends of mine, like bisexual encounters, like with guy friends of mine, which was an early source of like shame and confusion. And I think because I didn't really have that language that like bisexuality was a thing, I just used it from a standpoint of empathy because like the church, the organization, as witnesses would call it, they don't call it a church. I kind of call it that now just because that's what it is. But, they would concede that there are people within the religion that struggle with same sex desires, but they're just not
Right.
allowed to act upon those things, similar to the Mormons.
Exactly like the
And
Mormons. Yeah, same-sex attraction.
yes, exactly. So like they'll concede that that's a thing, but you're just not allowed to act upon it. And so I would just use that for like empathy wise. I'd be like, well, that must be really hard for somebody who's gay. Um, and so I just always struggled with it. My school that I went to public school, but I had some friends who were gay, and I was too embarrassed to tell them that my church said that I
You
wasn't
can't
supposed
be
to be their
friends with them.
friend. Yeah, I was like, I believed it was the truth, but I just thought that the group was wrong about that one thing. Oh, my mic's really quiet. Some people are saying, hang on a second.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you telling us that. It's okay on my end, but I also have my
Oh,
volume
okay.
cranked way up. So,
Interesting. Let me see if I can adjust my volume on my end.
and my mic is
Um,
cranked all the way up, and so is my sound.
Let me
Somebody else,
know if I'm louder.
yeah,
That's
you
the
can't
voice I
marry
go into
outside
when I'm
without
testing the
approval.
audio.
Yeah, that's nice. I like your audio testing voice. Somebody else just let us know if Jake has a problem with his mic, if that's something that we need to take a little pause and look into. One of the interesting things about my religious experience, very similar to yours, is that there's that in group and that out group. And you think, now that I'm atheist and I'm outside of religion and I see religions and how they talk about love and service and kindness and charity and all those different things, if I didn't know better, if I hadn't been inside the organization that I spent my life with, I would think that religion was going to be very loving. Right, like
Right.
a beautiful embracing experience. You read the New Testament and the Rabbi Yeshua sits down with prostitutes and lepers and all the people. He's this loving kind. The apostles are like, get rid of those kids are annoying, and he's like, bring me the kids.
Yeah.
Yeshua is very embracing, he's very loving,
Now we
but
called
that
him
wasn't.
Jesus. Just that's
So I
how I
refuse.
called.
I refuse to call him Jesus anymore. I called him Jesus too when I was a Mormon, and his name wasn't Jesus. His name was Yeshua, and I don't
Wow.
know why we let the Greek patriarchy steal the name of a fairly important human being. And
That's a great point.
just so you know, I'm atheist. I don't believe that Jesus was God, that he was resurrected, but I believe that he was a man that had enough impact on society that he deserves the respect to be called by the name that he would have been called. I had a Bible historian tell me last year that in Nazareth, where I believe in a historical Jesus, in
Same.
Nazareth, where Yeshua was attributed to have lived most of his life, they would have shortened it to Yesh, which is just Josh. So instead of Joshua, the Nazarenes probably would have just called him, hey Yesh. So Josh, that would be the translation
Yesh
of
Queen.
Josh. Yeah, Yesh
I love
Queen.
that.
So anyway, yeah, like Jesus is very loving. He's very embracing, right? But that wasn't my experience inside of my religion. And for you as a JW too, there's the good guys and the bad guys. There's only a certain amount of people that are going to actually, be the good guys in the end. And in this life, there's so many people outside of the group. And I think that for a lot of individuals, that right there causes so much inner conflict. It caused me in a lot of points in my life to dissociate because like I'm going to church learning to love, but then I leave church with 10 more people that I'm supposed to hate. So then you
Yeah.
go to school and like, well, I'm supposed to love people, but I'm also supposed to hate people, but hey, I'm going to be friends with the gay people anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're kind of forced
You
into a
chose love.
situation where, yeah, like you have to live a double life a little bit. And you're also like, you don't want to think that you're in a cult where you have to believe exactly like everybody else. So you allow yourself a little permission to have little nuances to things while still affirming that the overall structure of the thing is the truth in some way. And so those were things that I thought to myself, but I wouldn't have been able to say in my official capacity as a witness. Like that wouldn't be something that I could preach at your door on a
You
Saturday
were being
morning.
a rebel by
I was
embracing
be
and loving everybody.
I was so rebellious. I never snuck out and went to parties. I didn't start drinking until I was like 25, but I was rebelliously nice to gay people. It's true.
Today, we would call that toxic empathy. And I've heard a lot of conversation in the wake of Charlie Kirk's tragic murder last week about
Yeah.
toxic empathy. It's a big talking point. I heard an entire Mormon podcast this week where they talked about toxic empathy and how Jesus does call us to, call people to repentance, etc. And the empathy can be a negative. I don't believe in that phrase toxic empathy, but it was certainly taught to me in my religion. And it seems like within Jehovah's Witness, that was also a big deal. Would you say that that concept, like you wouldn't have had that phrase back in the day, but did you have that
Right.
concept of empathizing with some people as toxic?
Absolutely. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about how they have a different word for it, but we absolutely had the same kind of thing. Basically, Jehovah's Witnesses are supposed to be no part of the world, and the world is everything outside of Jehovah's Witnesses. So, even other denominations of Christianity, those are false religions. That's Christendom, which is a bad word within the group. We have the one true religion on earth, and so it's our job, it's our responsibility to preach this one truth because God is using our organization to preach the truth. And because of that, you have to limit your association with people on the outside of the group. And you do also have to limit your empathy because one of the things that they are insistent on, witnesses claim to be apolitical, but then suspiciously in terms of the culture war politics align with the far right on absolutely everything, right? They probably wouldn't use the
That's a
word woke.
coincidence.
Total coincidence that they entirely affirm a conservative theological hierarchy and an American centric reading of the Bible. That's a complete coincidence, but they don't vote. So, yeah. Um, and so, yeah, like they will warn you about being overly empathetic with gay people. Don't watch all these shows that have trans people and gay people or that feature adultery and sleeping around because of course those are the exact same as being just gay or trans, because they say that it will cause you to empathize with those characters and you will start to see them as human, and you can't do that. You have to be okay with God killing all of them in Armageddon. So yeah, no, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, that was a big part. And I think that that's one huge similarity between Jehovah's Witness and Mormonism because there is an in group and an out group that is only you. It's not even other Christians. It's not other nice people. It's not other Americans. You are very isolated and you were chosen and different and above the rest. Like In Mormonism, we would say
Yeah,
that we were the elect. I was an elect
the
lady.
elect. Wow.
Yeah,
Congratulations. Have I
there's a scripture,
congratulated you on being
right?
an elect lady? Yeah, we were, what would we have said? We did have similar language to that. But just the truth. I mean, the way that we colloquially refer to the religion was the truth. And so that's how we were like, oh, that guy left the truth. That's how my family talks about me now. I'm someone who left the truth, which is crazy. I mean, from their standpoint, yeah, that's insane. Why would somebody leave the truth and just choose lies on purpose? That's
Mhm.
insane. He must be manipulated by Satan. Um,
Under the influence. We called it under the influence, like driving under the
oh,
influence, under the
yeah.
influence of Satan. And that was kind of a broad brush that we painted so many things with, like she made out with her boyfriend, she's under the influence of Satan, or he
Oh,
apostatized, he's under the influence of Satan. He just came out as gay, he's under the influence of Satan. So it's
that's a
it's under the
great
influence, yeah.
that's a great turn of phrase. I mean, not great, but that's very clever. I can appreciate the clever manipulation that they're doing. Yeah, that's exactly what it would be for us. That's worldly thinking. That's the contamination of Satan's world. It's satanic thinking to begin to think that maybe it wouldn't be so great for God to kill 8 billion people in Armageddon and save 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses. If you start thinking like that, you're going to start unraveling the whole thing. So, yeah, you have to hate what is bad. You have to hate what Jehovah hates. That's a very that's a
Ooh,
rallying cry.
that's it
Hate
right
what Jehovah
there.
hates.
It's like
Yeah.
the 3 minutes of hate in 1984, right?
Yes.
When they put the stuff on the speaker and everybody gathers around and you all just, like you hear and
Right.
scream and together you unite. Yeah, you have to hate who they tell you to hate and love who they tell you to love.
Yeah. And so what they'll of course say is what all Republicans and Christian nationalists would probably say, which is that they don't hate gay people, they just hate the gay stuff that they do. And you
Love the
can't.
sinner, hate the sin.
Yeah,
Yeah, hate the sin, love
exactly.
the sinner. Hmm.
But yeah, so it creates cognitive dissonance in your brain where God is love and I love everyone, but also I hate what Jehovah hates, and Jehovah hates
Hmm.
most people when you think about it. I mean, I was about to say gay people, but he hates pretty much all people that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, and also a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses aren't going to make it if they don't get in line. Because it's not just being in the truth. Then you have to be exemplary. You have to be an exceptional member and make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to serve the group. And you
Do
could
you guys
still
have the
fall short of
scripture,
that.
the camel passing through the eye of the needle? It's
Yeah.
easier for the camel to pass through the eye of the needle than it is for, you know, people to enter. Straight is the gate and narrow is the path, or straight
Yes.
is the path and narrow is the gate that leads to eternal life. Like so few people, even if you're a member of the Mormon church, even if you are
Yeah.
righteous and you go to the temple and do everything all the time. I had a near death experience in 2013 as a result of an ovarian tumor. I was 36 years
Mm.
old. I was a mom. I was a lifelong member of the church, never missed a Sunday, tried to live with integrity. Like I was just doing the best that I could. And when my doctors told me I was going to die that day, I was 100% sure that I was not going to heaven because,
Mm.
so few people get there. Why would I be the
Yeah.
one? So I just knew, like, oh, I'm
That's
going to die. I'm going to leave my kids. My kids are going to be orphaned, and I will be in Mormon hell, aka the Celestial Kingdom, because so few people get there. My partner Kevin, he's a Lutheran, so he's just like, Jesus loves you. You're saved. He remembers, like, I was 10 years old when I accepted my Lord and Savior, and he's like, yep. After that, I was just like, I knew I was golden. I was in. Like,
wow.
we didn't
That
have
sounds like a
that.
very lax, borderline satanic religion. That's exactly what Satan would want
They
you to
were under the
think, that God
influence.
is that nice. He does. He sounds a little under the influence talking like that. No, God is very strict and persnickety about who he's going to allow into the kingdom of heaven. And yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses have
Jake, I
this
love when you
two.
talk Jehovah's Witness to me.
Thank you. No one's ever said that to me before, but it means a lot coming from you.
It's so
I,
great.
yeah, it's like, sorry, I got distracted by that, but compliment it threw me off guard. Yeah, it's like
God doesn't want
Jehovah's
just the
Witnesses.
mediocre.
Yeah, and he has a two-tiered salvation thing in Jehovah's Witnesses where there's a very select few of 144,000 people going to heaven. But that's not most Jehovah's Witnesses. That's like there's a dwindling amount. There might only be a few dozen of those left on earth for all we know. Most people are going to inherit the earth. The Armageddon is going to come, destroy all of the wicked kingdoms and systems on earth, all of Satan's wicked worlds, and then Jehovah's Witnesses, who will be miraculously spared this destruction, will rebuild the earth, and they will rebuild a new paradise earth, kind of restore the earth to its Edenic state, and bring about this theocracy where God's ruling in heaven, and angels are, I don't know, like traveling back and
Coming and
forth to
going.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The veil is open. Our word for it was paradisiacal. So we believed that the earth would be restored to its paradisiacal glory.
Yeah, paradisaic. We had that word. We left out the L, that little L at the end, but other than that, it was the same thing. But I guess all of that is to say, as a kid, and then as an adult, that was the thing I would struggle with, is you believe it's the truth, and if you really take the rules seriously, you question your own salvation and your own worthiness to get into that paradise. So you're constantly living in a state of fear and not feeling like you're good enough to live up to this standard.
So, how does that make you interact with the people around you? Like, it changes not just your thoughts, but your behaviors, right? Like, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, since we're on the topic of the LGBTQ, I talked about this recently on one of my videos. I I used to shop at Trader Joe's all the time as a little Mormon trad wifey. I'd take all five of my kids. We'd go into Trader Joe's. They'd have their little toddler carts, you know what I mean? And I had this checker. I always go to the same people, right? So I'll jump lines to go to some of my favorite checkers. And one of my favorite checkers was just awesome. And then she came out as gay and left her husband. And I felt really awkward about not going through her line anymore because like she had seen me pregnant with three babies. Like I shopped at the same Trader Joe's for like 10 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
when she got divorced and came out as a lesbian and then moved in with another one of the ladies from Trader Joe's, that so like I'm like, okay, well, I can't not go through her line because that would look weird, but I would go through her line and the whole time I would be thinking she's under the influence of Satan, she's going to hell, like, oh my
Right.
god, I can't believe she's doing this. And then not only was I thinking it, but I was just a total jerk. And I didn't know that I was being a jerk. I was witnessing because I had been taught that, because I have been warned, I must warn my neighbor. I think that Jehovah's Witnesses and, my Mormon church were probably fairly similar in that command to preach our religion to other people, to preach the gospel. And so if I was going through her line, I couldn't just love her anymore. I couldn't just think, that here's another human being that I really click with and I enjoy talking to her while she's scanning my groceries. I would go through the line and I felt like I had to preach to her. Like I remember
Yes.
telling her things like, you've really lost the light in your eyes. Like you used to just be so
Oh.
full of joy. And now I just feel like you look like you're stressed out. And she'd be like, I'm not stressed out. I'm happy, but I've changed my mascara. Maybe that's what it is. And I remember when Prop 8, the Mormon
Mm.
church was opposing Prop 8 for, gay marriage in California. And I invested money and time, even though I lived in Arizona, fighting Prop 8. And I went through her line one day and I just had to bring up the conversation. How do you feel about Prop 8? And she's like, oh, I'm all for it. Yeah, I would love to get married to my girlfriend. And I was like, well, just so you know, I'm opposing it. Gay people shouldn't get married. And like my behavior towards other human beings was despicable. I was doing it from a good place. Like I felt like I had to warn my neighbor. I wasn't doing it from a good place. A toxic cult had childhood indoctrinated me to do that. She threw back at me. You know what she threw back at me, Jake?
What was it?
Well, I don't think that people should have polygamist wives. So I don't think that, as a lesbian, that I need to take marriage advice from a Mormon. Just
That's a dagger straight through the ribs. That she got you there.
yeah. And I'm like, we don't have
Wow.
polygamy anymore. And she's like, but you did. So you don't get to,
Yeah. No, but
hypocrite.
it's you know, so everything you say there is very that's very familiar to me because as you said, or maybe I should say, as we said as Jehovah's Witnesses, we are temporary residents of this world. This system of things, as we would have called it, Satan's world, that is temporary, and we're really living for the future. We're living for the real life, which is the paradise earth and all
Mhm.
that. So your responsibility as somebody who knows the truth is to bear witness to this and try and bring people onto the ark, so to speak, before the flood happens. So whenever you're out grocery shopping or in a doctor's waiting room, you're supposed to be looking for opportunities to
Mhm.
witness, to bring up these topics. And because I was always too nervous to do this, that just created a lot of guilt in me because I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing this, but I'm not. Oh, I'm missing these opportunities. And we had a governing body member who infamously said that you might not make it into paradise if there's blood on your hands, and you will have blood on your hands if you're not preaching as much as you could be. So that was a state of like, oh, it's really terrible to live in. And then the times when I would make that step to try and be witnessy and do the right thing,
Witnessy.
I was trying to be all witnessy and jw.org esque, and I was just too, like, it didn't feel as invigorating and spiritual as I thought it would. I felt nervous and cotton mouthed the whole time and felt embarrassed afterwards. And so, again, I just took that to be a problem with me. Like, there's something wrong with me, that I'm just not spiritual enough, that I'm not feeling whatever I'm supposed to be feeling to move me to do this.
I had my hair cut one day and I sat there, for like an hour. I think she did cut and color and everything. So I went to my salon and I was there for a long time. And once I got all done and I was all blow dried and I'm walking out the door, I thought to myself, my stylist Dana asked me what I've done all weekend and I told her all this stuff, but I didn't witness to her about church. And
Right.
I had so much guilt. I'm walking out to my little Mercedes SUV, right? And I'm just racked with guilt over like why she's sitting there washing my hair and cutting my hair for the past hour or whatever. Why didn't I tell her about church? Why didn't I tell her about our lesson? Like I
Yeah.
I cried. Like I'm driving home and it's like we had this story in Mormonism about like you die and your next door neighbor is there in heaven with you, and your next door neighbor is being sent to Mormon hell, the celestial kingdom. And Jesus is like, well, go talk to Jenny about why she didn't witness to you. And so your neighbor
Oh,
asks you, why didn't you tell me about the Mormon gospel? We just call it the gospel. Why didn't you tell me about the gospel? And then you have to explain to them, well, I was too shy, or I was too busy, or I didn't think that you were going to accept it. And there was some allegory that they had that if it's a hot day and you have a cold pitcher of lemonade and you're not sharing your lemonade with your neighbors and they
oh
die
yeah.
of thirst, right? They dehydrate. That's what it is.
We
So
heard that
all of that.
exact same lemonade shit. We heard that. Sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to curse on this.
Oh, please.
Uh,
Sorry,
We hear
grandmas. There's
that.
going to be a little bit of cussing.
Sorry, that's just because I
I
didn't
love
get a
to
lot in
curse.
as a witness.
Yeah, me
I
too. I never cussed.
Well, here's the thing. I actually did. That was my other. I was nice to gay people and I cursed, not at the Kingdom Hall. Not like in the door-to-door ministry, but at school and among certain witness friends who were also super cool like me. We would drop some f bombs, Jenny. I'm here to confess that today.
What?
I
I
know.
didn't even cuss in my head because, like, I don't know, Mormon doctrine
What?
had scared me out of that. I never cussed until I left the church. And it's funny because then you leave your religion, right? And it's like, I can cuss all I want. And I would just be like talking to like the grandmas in my apartment complex and like, yeah, it's just like the best fucking day of my life. Like, I didn't know how to use profanity appropriately. And I was
Right.
like 45 years old cussing for the first time. Do you want to
Yeah.
answer this? Sacred Serenity, is that why JWs are always at the park every weekend? They're at my park. It's required to be a member in good standing. I do want to kind of like let's talk about that really quick. Will you explain that?
Yeah, sure. So, technically, yes. Like, you're supposed to be active in the ministry. Um, to be considered a witness in good standing, you have to turn in a field service report every month stating that you're preaching. It
Wait,
used
wait,
to
wait,
be,
wait.
What? Did you have a question
You
about that?
you turned in a report
Oh,
of how many
yes.
people you
And
witnessed to?
well, starting like last year, they made the rules all wimpy and Lutheran-y. And, now you just have to check a box on the form saying that you participated in the ministry. And if you're higher in the ranks in the group, if you're a pioneer, you still count the amount of hours and all of your placements and stuff. And so yes, when I was growing up and really up until the year 2024, witnesses had to count the amount of time they spent in the ministry, how many books, magazines they placed, how many Bible studies they had, and fill out this little report, and they would put it in a box at the Kingdom Hall, and then the congregation secretary, one of the elders, because only men can do things in the religion, he has to compile all the reports and set and tally them all up and send it off to the branch office. My dad was the congregation secretary for a long time. He hated it.
So Rand Kotastic, what a great handle, says, when I was
Oh
a kid, we
yeah.
used to have to write what kind of material we placed at people's homes. Like it was a book, a tract, a pamphlet, etc. So you guys keep that big of details on stuff?
Yes, Ryan Kaltastic is great. It's funny. So you mentioned the book thing. I'm writing like a paranormal, like a demon possession book that takes place within Jehovah's Witnesses, like a novel. And all the characters are witnesses. And I have a lot of love for witnesses. They're all 3-dimensional people and stuff. But one of the things that one of the characters does a lot is they have to pray for forgiveness in their head all the time. And that, what you were saying earlier about like internally cursing even in your head,
Hmm.
that's a thing that I remember feeling bad about. And yeah, sorry, I don't know why I took that as an opportunity to bring up my book. Oh yeah, and like Ryan Kaltastic's thing, there's a little bit of a murder mystery element, and one of the things that our exorcist character has to do is he goes through a dead girl's witnessing call book, because all of us witnesses have our records that we keep of all the doors we knocked on, who we talked to, what we placed with them, what their name was, all that stuff. And so witnesses, if they knocked on your door, they're keeping records on you. Um, the cart thing, like the reason why they're out in parks is because they're trying to expand beyond just knocking on doors and setting up these kiosks in public places like downtown areas and in public parks and college campuses,
Hmm.
and letting people approach them
The
um,
door knocking.
as opposed to door knocking. But yeah, so they're still doing a little bit of both, but that's why.
I had Jehovah's Witness door knock my condo here somewhere in like the last 3 months. I had witnesses, then I had Baptists, then I had the Mormon missionaries, and I invited them all in, and they did not know what they had stepped into. So
Yeah,
the
it's a
Mormon
whole other
missionaries are no
world.
longer allowed to come back now because I think that I I sowed some seeds of doubt with our Mormon missionaries, so they're no longer allowed to come back to my apartment. They told me that because I signed up to cook dinner for them, and they told me that their mission president said that they couldn't come to Sister Gage's house. That this is true,
Wow.
and they live in my apartment complex, so I'm on
Oh,
the
that's
black
awkward.
book. It is awkward. It's very awkward.
Yeah,
So
witnesses don't knock on our door because we are known to be apostates, and so we're like on the records as a do not call. Like, don't knock on this door. A scary person lives there. Um, yeah, so I have had Mormons knock on our door not too long ago, but witnesses, they stay away.
okay, I have a couple of questions for you. So first, so now we know a little bit about your life as a Jehovah's Witness. One thing I do want to point out is that you say on your channel a lot that your family was amazing and that your life inside of Jehovah's Witness was in so many ways beautiful, wholesome. You felt a support network, talking about going through health challenges and things, and how your community was there for you. And I think that a lot of people just assume, especially people in our religion, assume that we leave our faith because it sucked. We didn't like it. We weren't appreciative,
Right.
like pride, whatever. And so you leave your religion. But I've heard from you, and if I'm hearing you correctly in some of the things that you talk about, that you actually really loved your family and your life and the community within Jehovah's Witness. Is that pretty
Yeah,
accurate?
that is accurate. I really do still love my family, and I got to grow up around a really colorful cast of characters. Like, I got to hang out around so many interesting people that I would have never otherwise met, and so many great old people that formed my youth, like with their stories and um, their work ethic, their sense of humor, whatever it was. You spend a lot of time together in these kinds of close-knit communities because
And specifically
sometimes,
intergenerational time. You spend
yes,
time with
intergenerational
the
time.
elderly, you spend time with 2-year-olds. When you're working
Yes.
together in an organization like Jehovah's Witness and Mormonism, they're all ages. You have that multi-generational, that intergenerational village that
Yeah.
you don't typically have anymore. Like my neighborhood is all people my age. We're typically, we don't have that
So
intergenerational
like
connection
30, like
anymore.
me. So you got like a bunch of like 30 or
Right.
40-year-olds in it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And in cults and high control groups, what they do is they offer a shortcut to community. I think all people really crave that kind of intergenerational community, even if it's just within your own family or your found family. Everybody wants that. And the appeal of a church at best, or a high control group at worst, is that it's a group saying, well, here, you're lonely and you need a support system. Here we are. All you have to do is kind of become a new kind of person. And in the witnesses, we would say, put on the new personality. The new personality is all the things you got to do to be a Jehovah's Witness. But when you're in it, you'll go to get-togethers with your friends. You'll have congregation picnics. You'll have fun and laugh and be out in a car group together. You're doing weird stuff. You're out knocking on doors with strangers, but that's a strange bonding experience too. And so
You're all
I
working
think
together.
you're
Yeah,
all
like the
working
beehive
together. Yeah.
symbolism in Mormonism, which we stole from the Masons. You're all working
Oh
together,
yeah.
and humans psychologically bond through work. That
Yes.
cooperativeness of accomplishing a task, fulfilling mission, service projects, all that work really bonds you to other people.
Yeah, I think, like, if I may get political for a second, not that
Please
not that this is
do.
a political channel in any way,
Well, it
but
is now.
I know
Mine is.
I think that, oh yeah, mine is now too, but I think that what what people describe as a loneliness crisis is really a crisis of community and not feeling connected to real people in their real life. We all have plenty of connections with anonymous or maybe even we know what they look like, but online people. But actually working in real life with real people to accomplish a common task is very satisfying.
Mhm.
And you can see why people sign up to do stuff for the Trump administration, like ICE. Well, there's a
Mhm.
lot of young men out there who want something to do, who want adventure. If
We
you go
need
back and
purpose.
they
Yeah,
need
purpose,
purpose.
adventure, accomplishment, and that communally. Because you can have
Yeah.
purpose all alone. I can go out and do all kinds of stuff, but having those other humans around us, I mean, we are pack animals. We're not lone
Yes.
wolves. And that's very satisfying because we don't have villages anymore. Our tribal decay has isolated so many people. Most of us only find that, you might have
Yes.
a good job where you're working on tasks with other people. You might have a family system that, you're planning vacation together and, managing the home and stuff together. But most people get that from church. Most of
Yep.
that shared accomplishment still happens from religion. And I would say that that's because religion back in the day supplanted our tribal connections as it
Yeah.
spread across the world. It displaced our tribes. That's my take on things. It's a bit of a
Yeah.
controversial take, but there's data to
No,
support
no.
that.
You said that when I talked to you on my channel, which people should watch my interview with Jenny. It's really great. Not because of anything I did, because
Well, because of
Jenny's
everything you
story
did. It
is
was
so
so fun
great.
talking to you.
Oh, thank you. I'm a good hang. Invite me on podcast more. Anybody watching? Um, I'm
Highly
hip. I'm
recommend. 10 out
cool.
of 10.
10 out of 10 experience. I have been thinking a lot about what you said about, smaller village type communities and things. And I totally agree with that. It makes a lot of sense to me. And I've been thinking about just my own community, having a moment or a lot of moments recently where I'm like, well, where do I start really with building a community? Like I live in an apartment complex, but I don't really know my neighbors.
I know
Um,
all of my neighbors. I can tell you how to do it.
well, see, like this is what I'm trying to get better at. And I think like that is the kind of political crisis that the right has taken advantage of in every avenue of entertainment, whether it's just like sports and wellness podcasts for young men, tradwife content for young women. The larger fascist project is an attempt to create a national identity. And we haven't had that since World War II, really. And even then, if you go back and watch like documentaries about Americans who signed up for World War II, a lot of it wasn't all that ideological. It was because they wanted adventure too. And so I think that is still something that I'm struggling with a lot after leaving, is because I have a lot of trust issues. When you are shunned and your entire community vanishes like that, and
Mm-hmm.
you go from being best friends with somebody to never speaking with them again, it messes up your trust issues.
Jake, you
At the
just
same
glossed
time,
over that, but can you pause there?
oh yeah,
Because I think that that's very important. Um, we see a lot of Christian nationalists, and some of these, and I always say not all Christians, because there are Christian congregations, there are Christian churches that are amazing, there are Christian people that are amazing, but there is this toxic wave of Christianity sweeping America right now, and I think probably sweeping the world. But we have our own unique brand here in America that
yes,
very much shuns anybody that doesn't fit in on a wide scale level. But you were shunned by your personal family, congregation, friends. What does that look like? How does that happen? So, wait, did we
yeah.
did we even get to? Did you tell us why you left the church? Hold on, hold the phone.
Sort of. I talked about like my stance on like LGBTQ
Okay,
issues,
but what was the
and I would
moment? We didn't get to that moment because we went. I went
the
in a different
moment.
direction. That was my fault. What was the moment? What was the
No,
moment that you
no,
knew that you were no longer Jehovah's Witness?
that's a okay. That's a good question. My memory of it was I just kept on having this compounding effect of like I was trying to escape this disconnect I was feeling, and I would say for a solid year, I was just feeling increasingly disconnected from the church. Really, it started in earnest when I was watching the monthly TV show that Witnesses put out, JW Broadcasting, and it was one of the leaders, one of the governing body members, said something along the lines of, well, he started talking about what if we see criticism about Jehovah's Witnesses online. And I was very curious, like, ooh, yeah, what? Because we're not supposed to look at any of that stuff. That's all we're
I
ever
never
told,
looked online until I left the
right?
church. I was
There's all these
44 years
liars.
old. Yeah.
There's all these liars spreading lies, and it's so scary and destructive that you'll believe it. So don't look at it. That always bothered me, and the logic of that, or lack of logic of that, was weighing on me. And so then, I'm at the Kingdom Hall. We're watching JW Broadcasting. I'm being a goody two shoes and like showing it for the older folks at the Kingdom Hall who don't know how to like work the internet at their house and stuff. And so I'm watching this, and he says, if you see rumors spreading about even the governing body on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, you shouldn't spread that stuff around. You wouldn't want to spread it and get other people entangled in it.
We had the
That
same thing in Mormonism.
it's full of lies and half truths. And by the way, Jehovah trusts the governing body, so shouldn't you trust the governing body too? And I was like, that logic doesn't really add up. Like, how can I possibly check that? It just kind of struck me that, like, wait a minute, this is a guy telling me right down the barrel of the camera that I need to trust him because God said so. And it was just like, it made me think about it in a way that I had just never thought about it. And then I could never unthink that. And it just like took a year of untangling stuff. And eventually I did. I had this moment at work where I had been wrestling with it, and I was having these breakdowns where like I would just feel really overwhelmed, and I would run in just into the bathroom and just cry, just have a breakdown. And I think
Just because you had so much conflict, because you wanted
yeah,
to believe in it, right? Like your whole
yeah,
family, your identity was Jehovah's Witness. You weren't
yeah,
choosing to
and
step out, but
I
but
was
you weren't
newly
able to
married
force
too.
yourself. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was newly married, and I loved my family a lot, and I knew that the consequence of not believing it was being shunned or living a lie. But because I was kind of already living a lie, I just knew that wasn't sustainable. Like this wondering if it's not true is already torture. If I know it's not true, and sure enough, it was torture for the months that I had to go to meetings while being PMO, physically in but mentally
Yeah.
out. It was torturous, and so um, that's what it really was. Was I just reached this point where I was like, if this is really the way God thinks, particularly about gay and trans people, but really just about everything, like if this is the way that God is, then I disagree with God. But
Hmm.
also at the time, I did believe in God, and so I was praying constantly. And it kind of seems to me like the more I prayed about it, the more evidence I was getting that I should not be trusting my religion. And so that kind of, was just like a permission structure in my own brain to kind of branch out and do research. Um, but yeah, as soon
So
as I
you felt like you
did,
were guided. You didn't feel like you were just suddenly like under the influence of Satan. You felt like you were
right.
guided by a higher power to start to
Yes.
deconstruct the religious structure that you
And
were in, the Jehovah's Witness.
I'm glad you brought up the Satan thing too, because the big thing that really got me to start questioning, even before I saw that governing body talk,
Hmm.
was just realizing, hey, wait a minute. So much of my life is governed by fear. Like it just struck me one day that you can't just resign from being a Jehovah's Witness, because if you do, you're treated the same way as if you are disfellowshipped. And people get disfellowshipped for murder, for CSA,
Hmm.
for adultery, for just being gay. Like there's all of these things are equitable, right? So
And just losing your faith. Just I can't make myself believe anymore.
yeah,
Murderers, like all the things, and then
yeah,
I can't make myself believe in this anymore. Same thing.
and it just kind of began to struck me like, wait, all of my actions are kind of based on the fear of what happens if I'm wrong, or like the fear of what happens if I leave this group, but it's all based on Satan and all this invisible stuff that I can't prove. And yeah, it just became unsustainable. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling.
No, you're answering great questions here. I feel like there are a couple. Somebody said that leaving your religion, losing your faith, and then being shunned sounds like a toxic, abusive relationship. I agree.
Yeah, it
So,
is. Like,
so you stop believing, and then is there one day when you just don't go to church? Like, I'm not going to church
so,
anymore, and you tell your wife, and then at what point then is everyone like, no more Jake? You're the black
right,
sheep.
right. So the way it kind of went down was I still had not done any research online. I had actively avoided it because I was too scared.
I left the church without ever researching a single thing online. I was 44 years old. I walked out of church one day, as you know. I just like there was an
Yeah,
the lesson that Sunday was the evils of homosexuality, and I just raised my hand and I'm like, you guys, I'm out of here. That's it. But I had never once, I'd never like Googled, is the Mormon Church true? The Book of Mormon, just nothing. I had never, because Satan rules the internet. So why am I going to go like jump into Satan's world on the internet, right? Porn and anti-Mormon material was the only thing that I was going to find there. So I had never researched anything. The day that I walked out of the church was the very first time that I let myself get online and start to actually look into the history of the Mormon Church.
yeah. I think that's it's similar to what happened to me. Like I had just in trying to bolster my faith and reading all of these publications, like I was trying to read Jehovah's Witness materials and answer my doubts, but I started to realize that this isn't good reasoning. Like once you accept that something might not be true, then you start reading it a little bit differently. And um, so the first thing I did was I told my wife, I was like, I'm really struggling. I just told her one night, I was like, I don't know if I believe this anymore. Like, I couldn't even believe I was saying this. Like, 'cause I had never said it out loud. But I was just like, like this stuff with this fellowshipping, I just think it's too cruel. I don't think it's right. And the blood transfusion things, I just don't think it makes any sense. And when it comes to gay people, I just think it's cruel and we're wrong. And so I'm ranting about all this stuff out loud. And it was upsetting to her, but we had a good conversation about it, right? She goes to bed at a certain point, and then I'm like, I just said out loud that I don't believe anymore. And I never once even looked at apostate material, and I don't even think I believe in Satan anymore. So I don't have anything left to lose. And so, like, the first thing I did was I went to npr.com and I read, one of my breaking points was, because I had listened to Fresh Air with Terry Gross like every day since I was
Love
a
fresh
kid.
air. Yeah.
Love Fresh Air, love Terry Gross. I had listened to that like with my family, like since I was a kid, and they had just interviewed this author who wrote a book, Leaving the Witness, written by Amber Scora. And so it just popped up on my podcast feed one day that, a former Jehovah's Witness talks about her former faith or whatever, and I was like, God damn it, I can't even listen to NPR anymore because there's anti-witness stuff on there. That was kind of the final straw for me. So I looked up the transcript of that interview on npr.com. I was too afraid to like even listen to the words because that might have some extra satanic power to it. And I listened, or I read the interview, and it was kind of mundane. I was like, oh, that wasn't a bunch of satanic stuff. And so then I just started looking around on YouTube, and I found interviews with like some ex-Bethelites. Bethel is the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, some ex-elders. And once I was able to hear that they were just normal people who like I would have been friends with if I was a witness, I was like, oh, a lot of people have gone through exactly this. And I just was too afraid. And like they make you feel like only you are experiencing that, and that everybody on the outside is evil, is satanic, and will try and trick you and get to you. And so once I started looking at that stuff, and also seeing like the governing body lying under oath and this royal commission they had in Australia. There's all, and it's like the Mormon church history
Little
too. Like
things.
when
Yeah.
you look into the history, it's so bad. Like it's so mundane and not magical and special.
Yeah.
So like
Well, the
once you
version of
start
history, so
deconstructing,
let's be specific though, because there's a version of history, and I have so many people, and it really bothers me when people ask me, how could you ever believe in Mormonism? Well, how could I believe in Mormonism? I was born and raised. Both of us, you and I, were both born
right.
and raised. Childhood indoctrination should be illegal. I actually have a bill and a petition to illegalize childhood indoctrination into religion. Children beneath the age, under the age of 18 should not be forced into a religion. It's actually against the anti-establishment clause, and the children's right to just be children should be protected in the United States of America. But like, we were both born and raised, and the history of the church that I was taught within the church is in no way the reality of the history of the church. I was sold this Disneyland fairy tale of Joseph Smith. I was 44 years old, Jake, when I left the Mormon church, and I never knew that Joseph Smith had had all of these multiple wives. I had heard about Joseph Smith's polygamy, but I was told, oh, no. He was sealed to all of those women after he died. He never had actual polygamist wives in this life. And then I leave the church, and just on the church's website now, they've had to release documentation because they can't lie and hide things anymore. And I'm like, 14-year-old wives, 15-year-old wives, Brigham Young had 13-year-old wives. I had been a member of the church for 44 years. And the history that I had been taught by the church was so magical and so faith promoting. And people have to realize that, like, people on the outside, how could anyone be part of a cult? How could you believe all that stuff? Well, we didn't believe all that stuff. We believed the magic version that they sold us.
Yes. That is exactly the right point to make, because when people, like when normies look at videos that I've made, like debunking JW videos, they're watching these videos and they're like, how could anybody watch this stuff? But it's like, but these videos are not shown to newbies, they're not going to just show you the really
No.
weird, creepy stuff right out the gate. They're going to draw you in. And I was raised in it, as were you. So it's like it's just your whole life from the minute you're born. That's your status quo reality. It's not like you had a bunch of alternatives and you were like, yes, I think I like Jehovah's Witnesses the best, and I will pick that one. It's just like you fall into it.
Isolation
Now,
is the number one ingredient for like high control, right? So
yeah,
if you want to control a group of people, isolation is that number one component. Now, yeah, interestingly, like Jehovah's Witnesses are all over the world and Mormons are all over the world. So what they do is they build in that isolation by making you fear, even like your next door neighbor. You're afraid of the kids in your class aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. As a Mormon, I wasn't allowed to date non-Mormons. I wasn't allowed,
oh yeah,
like I had a couple of friends, I'd come home from like kindergarten and like, oh, I want to hang out with so-and-so. And it's like, well, they don't go to church with us, so you can't. So they maintain that isolation, even
yeah.
though you're in this open society within neighborhoods. And when you're in that insular group like that, then everybody around you also believes in Jehovah's Witness, and they're telling the story of the church, the organization, the same way that the organization would want you told. It's very isolating. It's not like you're hanging out with a bunch of friends who are like, hey, hey, Jake.
Yeah, that's something that I think, because you mentioned Charlie Kirk, I think that's something that's actually important when it comes to understanding the right's reaction. Like the
Mhm.
reality is, while yes, many people know exactly the kind of things he said, the kind of like hateful rhetoric that he spewed, the vast majority of people reposting all of this stuff, they actually don't know that. They are just they are hearing a magical version of reality, not looking into it at all and reposting it because they're already a part of the right group that has the truth. So anything that, in this case the administration is saying, it must be true. They don't need to look into past statements of Charlie Kirk. JD Vance just said in his weird posthumous hosting from the White House podcast that he never said some of that stuff, even though he did. So, like, they can just spew lies and they don't have to conform to reality because they know that their base doesn't question it. They live in an alternate reality where the only news
Yeah.
sources that they consume and the only things reflected on their social media feeds, the only people in their friend groups, it's all day, every day, an alternate reality. And so they're not grounded in the same facts that the rest of us are. And frankly, something that I can talk about here that I haven't talked about as much on my channel,
Please.
I I don't really know why, is just the Donald Trump's rise to power in 2016 actually did have a big part to do with my waking up because when first of all, I wasn't supposed to be paying attention to politics as a witness, but I just was interested because it was the most interesting thing happening that this crazy reality show guy was running for president, and it seemed
Isn't it
so obvious.
interesting to say that sentence that you as an adult were not supposed to be paying attention to politics,
Yeah,
and as an adult you believed and you obeyed those leaders like that? It's just a
yeah,
funny thing to hear come out of somebody's mouth. I wasn't supposed to be interested in
totally.
politics. That's how controlled we were in our religion. So
Yes,
sorry, go
that was
ahead.
so no. That's a great point. That's a great point. Like the
Like that was a
amount
very
of
normal sentence for you, but I think for a lot of people listening that
very
wouldn't be a
normal.
normal sentence. Like, yeah, my church, I
Yeah,
wasn't supposed to wear underwear that wasn't the garment, so I never did. I didn't even own undies that weren't just the Mormon. And then people will be like, wait, your church, you were a 44-year-old adult and your church controlled your undies, and that seems normal to us cult babies. But
yes.
people out there
Well,
listening
like
are going to think that's weird that somebody told you not to be involved in politics or interested in politics and you obeyed that.
just today, I think Pete Hegseth announced that there was going to be a new like shaving dress code at the White House where all the men had to be clean shaven. I mean that is exactly the rule is that Jehovah's Witnesses had
Mhm.
until a few months ago when they're finally like, okay, men can wear beards now. But all the grown adults who work in the White House, they're not going to question that. They're like, sounds good, sounds, modest and reasonable, and it's manly. Yep, that sounds good to me. That's the rules. And then they just will incorporate that into their version of reality, and they won't question it because they've gotten into a mental habit of not questioning things and just following orders.
Hmm.
And so none of it really feels like a choice, even though it is. Um, but seeing Donald Trump in 2016 start to talk about, like, seeing the way that he weaponized the real problem of fake news and saying, well, actually, by fake news, it's just anything that is negative
Doesn't agree
about
with him.
me. Well, I realized when he said that, like, that's what we do as Jehovah's Witnesses. If something is negative about the organization, that means that it's apostate and it's fake news and we can't listen to it. How do I know that that's not what my own leaders are doing? Um, so, and starting to pay attention to that and trying to understand the alt-right, as it was called back then, and like just trying to understand like the online communities I was in. Why are they so infested with, groypers, and what are those? That's not going to still be important in 10 years, right? Well, looking at all that stuff on YouTube, I started to find videos like debunking certain things like the Great Replacement conspiracy theory. I obviously didn't believe in that, so I thought it was interesting to watch somebody just go point by point, rebutting what a dumb theory this was. And then I would think to myself, well, why don't we do that with apostates? If they're just spreading lies about us, why don't we just take what they're saying and just point out all the lies? And the fact that we didn't do that started to tell me, wait a minute, maybe we have something to hide.
They don't have
Um,
specifics.
right. And so that's something that, like, I needed to break out of a theocracy. And then I bust out and I'm all excited to engage in American democracy. And it's like, oh shit, that's turning into a theocracy too. But all of those skills still kind of apply when it comes to not just not just swallowing the official story whole cloth.
Okay, I'm cruising comments here.
Oh yeah.
So Donald Trump kind of woke you up to things. So you talk to your wife and you tell her.
Yeah.
So you wake up the next day. And when was the point that you just didn't go to church?
I continued to go to meetings with her for a while, but the first thing I told her was that, like, I don't think I can go out in the ministry anymore because there's too much
It's
stuff that I
hypocritical.
don't there's too much stuff that I don't agree with, and so I can't go out and teach it. And she understood that. She's like, I get that. And frankly, we were not breaking any records in terms of our field service reports, and we always liked having an excuse to stay in because we were like newlyweds who just wanted to hang out on Saturdays and go to breakfast, so we didn't care. Um, but I went to meetings for a while, and I kind of got a lucky break in the forum of COVID when things went online over Zoom, and then it was easy to just as soon as I reached a point where I was going to have to make a hard stand, like I can't do this anymore, it moved online, and so I kind of didn't have to do that, and it was easier to just start to fade away without too many people noticing. I mean, but obviously my
And
wife knew.
your wife knew. So when did the shunning happen?
Shunning
And
happened
with
like
like when were you officially you were voted out of the church? You were excommunicated?
I was kind of voted out in a sense, and the elders met with me. I
Yeah.
mean, you're like
For
when you
apostasy, right?
criticize, yeah, and when you criticize the organization publicly, I mean, they really do consider it the worst sin. It's worse than anything else you can do, and so my punishment was decided before I went into this judicial committee, where I would sit down with three elders and they would decide my fate or whatever. But yeah, what was it? Well, so like my channel got found. I get these horrible calls from my parents where they're screaming and yelling, and then I'm screaming and yelling. How could you do this to us? You're throwing away your entire life and all this stuff. Like you're taking a shit on your family's legacy. My dad said at one point, like you've jumped over. It's one thing to sit on the fence, but you're hopping over to Satan's side of the fence and fighting me now. All this crazy stuff. And so,
I had so many
and
people pull that on me as I was leaving. My uncle
yeah,
said, your grandmother is crying in heaven. She's
yeah.
weeping because you've left the church.
And so I pointed out to my mom and dad, I was like, grandma and grandpa, they left the Catholic Church to become witnesses. Why am I not allowed to leave this group? And they're like, well, that's different because they found the truth. And once you find that, then you don't leave. Then you don't leave that. But I just, any attempt to try and talk to them or reason with them, you just see these shutters come down, and they just go into their training. It's like how soldiers and cops, like in this heat of the moment, they snap into whatever their training is, and that's what the cult indoctrination does. Is it's these blockades that come down against critical thinking, and they just go into all the excuses that the cult has taught them over the years. And so it's really, yeah, it is like their eyes roll in the back of their head and stuff. It's really upsetting. And so, like, my sister, she never even granted me a sit down conversation. I haven't talked to her in years, really. Like, I saw her briefly at a funeral for my grandfather recently, but she won't talk to me. She shuns me harder than anybody. And it started basically right away. The week that
So
it
is
was
it
going to.
official? Like, does anyone tell you you're being shunned now?
Oh yeah. So at the end of the
Okay.
meeting that I had with the elders, they're like, "You're gonna be announced as being no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses," and the announcement was gonna happen 2 weeks from then at a meeting. So I had a week to like tell people, like a week left of talking, legal talking to my family. And I was going to go around and kind of say my goodbyes. I have Crohn's disease though, and I ended up in the hospital. I was like bleeding to death. I needed a blood transfusion to save my life.
Jake.
Ironically, that I would not have been able to accept if I was a believing witness.
Mhm.
Um, my own dad did not text me when I was in the hospital. My family did not reach out to me. No family members visited me in the hospital, even though I was dying. I mean, that's how serious it was. And all of my friends who were my best friends, the best man at my wedding, my cousin, like, and it's still like that. Nobody's really left. Well, some people have, like some people that I knew and was kind of friends with left, but for the most part, it was a complete reset on my life. But I needed to know that. I knew that was the risk when I posted that video, but um, yeah, there's only one way out, and they don't make it easy. That's what makes it a cult.
You don't realize when you're in one of these organizations where there's an in group and an out group. So we talked about that a little while ago, how there's the
Yeah.
chosen, there's those ones that are, you are Jehovah's Witness. Um, I was a believer. I was the elect. I was a daughter of Heavenly Father. I was all these things. And that feels so good when you're the chosen one, but you don't realize
Mm-hmm.
that the downside of these organizations that have in groups and out groups is that it's such a quick fall to be on the outside.
Yes.
And it's fine when you're on the inside, like everything's la la la, this is great. But once you're just a little bit on the outs, in Mormonism, we call it the black sheep. My family
Yeah.
shunned me within just weeks of me leaving the church. I left the church in 2018. I have not seen my parents since I was LDS. I have not
Whoa.
seen my brothers and sisters. When I had my abdominal surgery 2 years ago and I was bleeding out and I was dying, my partner Kevin reached out to my parents and let them know that I was expected to die. And what they did was they blocked his number. And I can't
Wow.
imagine as a mom, somebody texting me and saying one of your kids is dying, they're in the hospital, they're going to die, blocking their number and walking away like that. But I am so evil because I've apostatized, because I've denied my, belief in Heavenly Father. I broke my temple covenants. I took off my temple garments. I betrayed multi generations of family. I've destroyed my eternal family. My mom wanted all of her kids in heaven
Yeah.
with her, and
Ugh.
I've taken away her grandkids. So I have had no contact. I counted one day, I added up like all my cousins and everybody. I have like hundreds of aunts, uncles, cousins, my siblings, nieces, nephews, great uncles, my parents, um, who I have never seen again. When I left the Mormon church, it was as though my entire family was on a train and the train drove off a cliff and I was the only one not on the train, and my entire family is dead. 7 years. I have never seen anybody in my family. And here's where that should be alarming to everybody. we have groups of people in the United States right now who have an in group and an out group. Did you
Yeah.
hear J.D. Vance? And this is an impeachable offense. He has an oath of office that he will protect all citizens. J.D. Vance called on employers to fire anybody who didn't sympathize with Charlie Kirk. If you have people who are not
Yeah.
sad, who didn't love Charlie Kirk, whatever, then fire them. And if you know somebody like this in your life, if somebody in your life has posted that they're glad that Charlie Kirk is gone, call their employers, find out who their boss is, make sure that you get them fired and destroy their lives. Right now, in the alt-right, which I was part of, I was hardcore MAGA, Trump follower, Christian nationalist, prepping for the end, and maybe we can touch on that for a second here. I believed, I not only did I believe that they were bad people, but I wanted 80% of America to disappear. I thought that
Yeah.
they were unworthy. I thought that they were less than. I hated my neighbors. I hated, the checker at Trader Joe's after she came out as lesbian. I saw them as less than, and that superiority, that religious superiority, guided a lot of my actions. And Jake, are you a little bit alarmed to see that manifesting itself and coming out of the White House, coming out of every media outlet, coming out of so many people? I have people in my Facebook right now who are like, if you don't love Charlie Kirk, if you're not
Yeah.
torn to bits that he's
Yeah.
gone, and if you're on the left, that's the thing. If you're a leftist, if you're a liberal, if you don't believe in family, if you believe in gay marriage, if you're supporting trans rights over Christian rights, then you're dead to me. Are you alarmed by that? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I barely slept last night, honestly. I was pretty scared by that. I mean, I have a pretty strong stomach for triggering stuff, and I've got some religious trauma associated with just like Armageddon fears, but for the most part, no biggie. That genuinely freaked me out,
Armageddon fears. I love
and
that.
yeah, I mean, I guess I certainly believe that something like Armageddon could happen, but it's not going to be some magical God event. It'll be because Peter Thiel, fucks us over with his surveillance company or whatever. Um, I do just want to clarify real quick because I saw a comment. Everything worked out great with my wife. We are still married, and it's great, So the most important person in my life eventually did wake up, but it was a journey for her that was different than mine, and took her a couple years to reach the same conclusion. Um,
So you've both left Jehovah's Witness now.
yeah. So it's great. We're on the same page, but obviously that was its own trial. Now you talked about like with the polarization and stuff. I thought about making a video about this, and maybe I still should. I am just a conscientious objector to shunning. I just don't believe in that, and I do believe in people's ability to change. I believe that because I've seen it not just in myself, but in very unlikely people who you wouldn't think would ever leave that kind of group, but they do. I never thought that I would be this person talking on a channel like this when I was a witness, but now I am, and I think some of the best anti-Trump advocates on the internet who know how to talk about this issue the best are often ex-MAGA people. I think, like I'm much further to the left than the bulwark, but I think that those guys have an understanding of the Republican mind because they really believed it, and it's their principles, their principled beliefs in what they thought conservatism was that led them to being an anti-Trump conservatism, an anti-Trump conservative. Like Bill Kristol, that guy, I have a lot of disagreements with, but he clearly believes in democracy and doesn't believe in dictatorship, right? Those, you never know the kind of person who can change their mind. That's not to say that you owe every single person a debate, but when it comes to your real life, the real people in your real life who you see, you have a connection with. I'm not talking about randos online and in your social media posts. I'm talking about your coworkers and your friends and your family. Every single call expert says the exact same thing, which is the best way to break them out of it is to maintain some kind of contact, even though they don't want it. They
Yes.
don't want that contact, but they need to know that there are people on the outside that care about them.
Have you
So,
seen my denim revolution? I've been on some radio shows and stuff talking about the denim
no.
revolution. It's my American version of the Velvet Revolution that overthrew
Oh,
Czechoslovakia, the communist regime in 1989 when I was a high school student. Step number one is just know your neighbors and rebuild your tribe. Of course, I'm all about the tribal decay and
yeah.
the tribalism. And for me, and again, like the second chances, like you're saying, like who would have thought that you would be outside of Jehovah's Witness, doing the things that you do now, building a better life for yourself and your wife and people around you? Nobody would have ever thought that I would ever leave the Mormon church. Nobody would ever think that I would leave the Trump train or MAGA, Christian nationalism, white supremacy. People who knew me would have thought that I was in it for life, right? And yet
Mm-hmm.
here I am. And I think that you do have to maintain those connections. What's the best way to overthrow MAGA and to overthrow these ideologies? Be friends, invite them to
Yeah.
a book club, have a
It's
barbecue together. Don't talk politics, you don't want to end up in a fist fight,
yeah.
but
But it is human. It's human contact. Like we hear a lot about negative parasocial relationships on the
mhm.
internet, but parasocial relationships can be very positive. Like if you live in a neighborhood, I didn't have any gay best friends, but because I went to school with kids who were openly gay, and I saw that they were just normal kids who were going through the same shit my straight friends were going through, it was impossible for me to reconcile the evil stereotype that my church was putting out there. So if you have the ability to just be more involved in your community just as a person, not even as an activist, but live your authentic life, and that itself is a testament to why they are wrong about human life. They have a narrative about what people are like and what they ought to be like, and every day that you are earnestly and with empathy living in contrast to that is a win, and it frays at their narrative. I mean, you can see that they are pushing ahead with a completely fabricated story about who Charlie Kirk's shooter is. But when
Mhm.
it did come out that it was somebody who was
A
not on the left,
Mormon.
it was a Mormon from Utah.
Yeah, my
It
my kids went to that school. I've been to that campus so many times. It was the
Oh, it's
Mormon
wild.
kid.
But
Yeah.
it punctures their narrative. And with the
Mhm.
Mormon church, it was ex-Mormon activists being so effective at spreading the truth about who Joseph Smith really was that it forced the Mormon church into this position where they had to put at least some version of that on their website because it was
Yep.
just inescapable. They couldn't get away with the blatant lie anymore. And we see that in the witness community a lot, where they'll never admit that it was ex-witnesses that made it happen, but we will force the church into changing for the better. Um, all of that stuff can apply to what's happening with the government, I think. I know you have it hard out, though, so I don't want to
So,
keep
but
rambling.
I want to finish this topic here. How would people do that? So you're literally just befriending people around you, and I have some plans for this. I think that people who are just enjoying their happy lives and aren't part of the MAGA movement, we need to post more happy things to social media. We should have more podcasts, more influencers who are just your regular, everyday, happy liberal. Like
Yeah, I agree. Like, not that's like on my channel, I
not the
try and make
angry,
stuff that's
embittered
funny.
political stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to just make stuff that's not political. I'll figure out how to do that at some point.
Well,
But
I don't plan to do that anytime soon. I'm going to be as political as possible
it'll be
because
on
I think
another
it's
channel.
time. Yeah.
But
It's time to stand up.
I do try and approach stuff both on the channel and in real life with like a sense of humor, with a sense of lightness, and like I'm not gonna flip out at you if I disagree with you. Like
Mhm.
I will call you a fucking idiot, but you know the kind of person I am. I'm not, I'm not actually gonna endanger your life in some way. We're just gonna yell about it and have a conversation. I came from a very debatey family. We liked to argue in a fun way. And so I think that there are ways, when it comes to obviously like dehumanizing hateful rhetoric about Black people and LGBTQ people, we're talking about different things. But when it comes to just being a person, which I'm still very much learning how to do, just being more of a human in my immediate community probably does more good than all the yelling I do online about politics.
Get out and rebuild your tribe, everybody. Like, I think that that's the answer to everything. Do you want to know how I've gotten to know all of my neighbors in my condo?
Tell me.
Because we just moved here a year ago, and I know, like, everybody knows me. I'm a weirdo. I knock on people's doors. Every single person that I can see their door from my condo, I have knocked on every single person's door. Hi, I'm Jenny. We just moved in a couple months ago. Want to exchange phone numbers? Do you guys want to go out on Saturday? We just randomly go to dinner with people. I randomly have people over for dinner. And once a month, this is how I kind of like keep my Mormon trad wifey stuff going. Once a month, I bake stuff. And I decorate it all cute. So this week I'm doing scotcheroos, and I
explain what scotcheroos are. Just
scotcheroos are like
people don't
chocolate bottoms with like these scotchy tops, like
butterscotch,
like brown sugar with butter. They're so good. I'll post the recipe on my Down Home Healthy page. I'll put a link in the description.
Can you move into our apartment complex and make those as well?
Well, and I do cinnamon rolls, like I do all my Mormon recipes. So like my sourdough cinnamon rolls. Sometimes I do like big breakfast muffins and things like that. At least once a month, I do baked goods, and I have enough for everybody. Like I can't do the whole apartment complex of like 2,000 people or 200 people in my condos or whatever. I just do the people that are like I can see their front doors. There's 23 something people, right? And I knock on every single door, and then I stand there and have a little conversation. Hello, I brought the monthly, this month it's cinnamon rolls. How are you guys doing? How's your medical program down at the college? And your cat was at the vet. Is your cat better? And it's funny how like when my daughter moved out here just a couple months ago, she graduated from culinary school. She moved out. She's an adult now. She's on her own. I mentioned to a couple of my neighbors, because I stop and talk to everybody. If somebody's at the garbage can, I stop and talk to them. Hello, how's it going? That's what we used to do. I'm old. I'm a grandma. That's what we did with everybody. When I told one of my neighbors while we were at the mailbox that Chloe was moving out, this neighbor went out and shopped for all these little things. And that afternoon, she comes over and she has this box with all these little gift bags in it. And she's like, she's a grandma. She's like, I just wanted to make sure that Chloe, give her a little start as she's moving out and make sure that she knows that she's loved and help her. And there was like a one size waffle iron, like perfect for a college kid, a little waffle iron, and a couple of, like a fuzzy blanket, like a fleece blanket type of thing. Just all these neat little things, like, housewarming, I guess is the word that I'm thinking of, from my little, 55-year-old neighbor right across the way, because I've made those connections with people. Building back those connections. And I don't know who of my neighbors is Republican or Democrat or MAGA or atheist or what. We don't talk about that shit. Here's what we talk about. Right. Cinnamon rolls, cats, what Mexican restaurant we're going to go to on Friday.
Right.
That's what we talk about.
That.
That's how you fix things, Jake. Yeah.
Here's what's devastating with that is you're telling me that the solution to all my problems is more door knocking. And that's a little hard for me. That's a little hard for me, but I think you're probably right. And I do have experience.
I have to say, Jake, that it's been really important for me to reclaim some of those things for myself.
Yeah.
So reclaim door knocking. And now,
hey, wait a minute. I have invested a lot in this skill. I put a lot of skill points into door knocking. I could still use this for something.
Right. Yeah. Like reclaim it and own it from a really authentic point of view. Like me with baking. Like that's how I reclaimed baking, because I was forced, because I was a woman in the Mormon church, right? That was always my thing. I had to bake when people got sick. I had to bake for my husband. So I have reclaimed baking by making things for my neighbors. And that was really triggering. The first time I ever pulled out my cookbook and baked like the Mormon cinnamon rolls, oh my God.
That's amazing. I love that. That is very inspiring, because I have had the sensation that I should do that. That I'm like, I was talking to Christine about this. I was like, I think I might just like knock on doors. I don't know. Is that weird? And I'm like, I don't think
My
I can actually
neighbors
do that.
love it. I like, and when anyone moves in, then we always knock on their door and like, hi, we're Jenny and Kevin. So we had a neighbor who they're newlyweds. They're like in their 20s and they just moved in a couple weeks ago. And like the day after they moved in, their battery wouldn't start in their car. They'd been on their honeymoon and like some light had been on or something. They had just come home from the airport. It was like 11 o'clock at night when they got here. And we were the only people in the whole complex that they knew. So they knocked on our
Yeah.
door late at night and we're
This
like,
is what I want.
can you help us jump our
Unironically.
battery? And Kevin was so excited because he has like the whole charger system. So he goes and gets it
Yes.
out of the closet and it's all charged up. And Kevin out there at the rescue. And that's how we build back America. That's how we reunite the division.
That's how
One
we build
person at a
back
time.
better. And that's
Yeah,
what you
it
call it,
is.
right? You call it your Build Back Better plan?
Yeah, we don't need the
Perfect.
trickle down. We build back better with the trickle up. We're gonna trickle up.
We're
So
gonna trickle it on up. Absolutely.
yeah.
I love
Okay,
it.
Jake, I wish that we could hear your story for hours to come, but I am now 10 minutes past my hard stop. Tell everybody where people can find you once again. You're Jake.
Altworldly, ALTWORLDY
I'll
on
put it in the
YouTube.
description.
And that's it. You can find me there and figure out what's going on from there. Watch my new video on Peter Thiel. It's good. And
Okay.
yeah.
I'll put a couple videos. I'll link a couple videos in the description when I post this show. I'll go back in a little bit and put those. I love your video of you leaving the Jehovah's Witness and that whole deconstruction and everything. So I'll put that up there for people. And
You know what? They're all great. All my videos,
they're
pretty good.
great. You do a good
You're not
job.
gonna.
So
That's actually not true. I click on the ones that she links. Those will be good for sure. I can't vouch for everything I've put out there.
okay, Jake, any final thoughts?
No, thank you so much for having me, though. It's been a great conversation. I loved it.
Yeah.
I feel invigorated and ready to knock on doors.
Reclaim
once in my
that.
life.
Yeah,
Love
reclaim
it.
that. Get to know a couple
Yeah.
neighbors. And I guess that's going to be my parting words. My parting words are in the next week, stop complaining about how terrible the world is, how terrible the country is. Go out and make the world a little bit better for somebody around you. Get to know a couple of neighbors that you maybe haven't met. If there's a couple of parents in the school drop off that you haven't said hi to before, just invite somebody to go out to dinner. See what happens.
Yeah.
So, all right.
What she said.
Thanks so much, Jake. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and have a great day. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.